This is part 3 of how to get your book up on CreateSpace using the Pocketbook format. This should be the last video in this series. So essentially what we're looking at here is dealing with CreateSpace, dealing with how to get your cover built and so on and so forth, and specifically as it relates to the Pocketbook format, it's a little bit different than what you would do normally. For example, normally you can come into this location and download a template file. So let's say that you select black and white. If you'll notice, there is no particular trim size that's going to be what we want. We want 4.25 by 6.87, and that's not listed here. So they're not going to provide you with a template. That's bad, obviously, because you're going to need a template. Otherwise, it's all guesswork, and it's going to be a bit of a pain. The toughest part about dealing with this is the spline, and it's all based upon calculations and so on that they provide. Now, you can actually go through here and do the calculations on your own to get that all set up. Fortunately, I have set up a program. I happen to be a software developer, so I set up a program that will handle all the calculations for us and also put a template out that we can use. Unfortunately, it is going to require a little bit of work. You will need to have either Photoshop or PaintShop Pro or something to that effect that will allow you to do screen capture and also manipulation of the file. We'll get into that a little bit, but do note I'm only going to be covering Photoshop, and this is the Windows version of Photoshop that I'm using here. Sorry if you have something else. I don't know all the different software packages out there. I'm just showing you what I personally use. Okay, so first step is when we're going to create an interior. I created a fake book just so we can see what it's like on the CreateSpace site, how to build this thing out. I've already set up some fake title information and got an ISBN number. I'm just going to delete it, which means this will be put back into its pool, so I'm not really worried about that right now. The interior type I'm selecting is going to be the black and white for my text. I'm not doing color. You certainly can, but it's just not my thing. And then paper color, I never choose white. That looks very cheap. I choose the cream color, which is still not as, nice as what you get on their standard trade book, but it is definitely nicer than the white, and it looks pretty cool to me. So the next thing is choosing file size. The standard that comes up, I believe, is 6.9 or 6 by 9. I've been clicking this around a little bit, so it might actually be a 5 by 8, but I believe it's 6 by 9 is the standard. And if you'll notice again, we do not see 4.25 by 6.78, so no pocketbook size. So we think to ourselves, well, I guess they just can't do it then. Not true. We come down here to more sizes. We can then enter in our own trim size. So we type in 4.25, the height of 6.87, and then we click select. But you need to look at this warning. The way this is set up, it's basically going to say, hey, if you do this, not everybody's going to pick up your book. So you have to kind of make that decision on your own, what you want out of this. For me, it's worth it. If I really want to have expanded distribution, which frankly ends up costing too much money in my opinion, then I can have 2 books made. I can make one with the standard size, and I can make one with that as a pocketbook size, and I can just, order the ones that I want. Again, the reason why I choose the pocketbook size is because it looks more professional to me. It feels more like a standard fiction book to me, and also I get what I consider a accurate page count out of it. So that way my Kindle book will end up, having a decent page count as opposed to something that's underinflated or frankly overinflated. I want it to be as accurate as possible. I want it to be fair, in other words. So now we already talked about in the last video about outputting our file with the the layout and so on, and that's going to give us our page count. So what I did is I came over here and I had already uploaded the file that I had been working on, so I could get an idea of what the page count is from the standpoint of CreateSpace. So they told me 452 pages. So now what I need to do is I need to find a way to get a template at 4.25 by 6.87. That's 452 pages. Again, I created something that allows me to do this. So the URL for this site is, and I'll put it in the comments section of the video, is www.mycodeserver.com/CS. So like CS as in CreateSpace. Okay, so if you just type that in, you're going to get this page. Now your page might look a little different. It might, actually, here's what you're actually going to see is this. Now, you can put in whatever your page count is. So just as an example, let's just say that you have a 200 page count and you click submit. It's going to show you this little layout here. Now you notice that this spline is pretty thin, but the page count that we have on the Starliner book here is 452 pages. So I'm going to put in 452, and now you'll see the spline gets quite a bit larger. So that just means this book is thicker, but if you recall, that also means that we're going to have to adjust our margins accordingly, because with a thicker book like this, it's going to be more pages are going to be stuck down in the center here. So when the person gets to the center of the book, if you don't put enough of a margin in there, they're not going to be able to read your words because they're going to be buried inside of the actual spline. So that's why you have to mess around with that. Now, from here, what we're going to do is, well, let's just talk about this real quick. This is not an image. This is HTML and CSS. So this is not an image. This isn't something where you can just right click and then say, you can say save as, but it's going to save the page, not the image, because it's not an image. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, this is well and good, but how the heck am I supposed to use this if it's not an image? Well, that's a little tricky, and that's what we're going to talk about now. What you want to do is you want to do a screenshot of this page, and then you're going to bring it into Photoshop or into something like Photoshop. Again, I'm only covering Photoshop, but we have another problem here. The problem is that even though we can cut this out, which you do want to do, by the way, so we're going to go ahead and get down to the bottom. You kind of want to be as specific with this as you can. Okay, and then we're going to cut that, and we're going to create a new document, and we'll paste it in there. Now this is swell. The problem that we have, though, is that this is at 72 dots per inch. That's because that's what the internet serves pages at, 72 dots per inch. Well, that's what your monitor serves pages or images at too. So we have to convert this. Now what we want is, we really want 300 dpi, but in order for us to get 300 dpi, what we need to know is what's the difference between 300 and 72 dots per inch, because that's what we want to increase this by. So when we go to the image option, and we're going to come down to image size, and we're going to change the resolution, not to 300. You can if you want, but it's not. It's a better idea if you just do it this way. Is the difference between 300 and 72 is 228. You hit enter there, and there's your image. Now you might be thinking, good Lord, that thing's huge. It's all right. You can just bring this over, and now it's back to its normal size. The next thing that I personally do is I then use the magic wand, highlight the white section, and delete. And then do that again, and delete, and then do that again, and delete. And then that way, all of the items that we're putting within here are going to be easier to see. And then I do one more thing, and that is I open up the blending option, and I set the opacity to 50%. So I can still see it, but I can also see the items over top of it and so on, or bleeding through it, as you might imagine. So already, as opposed to going through and using this particular one, I'm just going to show you one that's already been built out. So right now, this happens to be, again, not set with a proper opacity. So to give you an example of what happens because of that, if I start putting this in, you're going to see that these items are being cut. You can't see them very well. But if I go up and set the opacity to 50%, now you can see the little stars, bleeding through and everything else, so you can see it. And you can drop the opacity even more if you want to, or you can just get rid of it altogether. Wouldn't recommend getting rid of it altogether while you're building this out, though, so it'll help you see things. So then I start adding in things like my borders and my text. Obviously, I don't want to do this real time while you're watching. That'll take forever. But let me just make these visible again. Going all the way up. Boom. So as you can see, you can sit here and put your stuff in here. And by the way, this is the ISBN section that CreateSpace is going to use. So everything that you do has to be around that. Everything that you do has to be within these uh, two squares right here. Not necessarily the image going outside, but any text has to be within these hard lines. Any image that you want to ensure is going to be shown has to be within these dark lines all the way around, but it will bleed out to the sides of the pages for the most part. You shouldn't lose anything like that. And then basically what I do at this point is I have verified that everything looks good with this on, so I take it off. And now I can kind of imagine this is what a complete book looks like. At this point, you're going to want to save this out. So I do a save as, and then I am going to do a PDF right there, a PDF file, and that's here. Here's the guy right here. I don't want to override the one that I already have there, so I'll just do 2. Hit enter. I set everything to maximum. I leave everything else alone. I click OK, and boom, it puts it out there. And at this point, I can now go back into my home page. I can upload a print ready cover. As you can see, it's already there, but you can choose that one, upload that item, and submit it. And at that point, you have to wait to make sure that it works okay. So far, I have submitted 12, 14, 15 books using this method, and I have not been rejected one time. Again, the main things that you have to make sure of is that all of your text stays within these dark lines, or like this brown color, that they all stay within inside of that everywhere, that you don't override this yellow box, and that's really pretty much it. Everything else can go beyond. You just are basically saying, I'm taking a chance that some of this might be cut off. So you just be a little bit careful with that. I always make sure that my images and so on that are really important stay within the brown section anyway, just in case. And then if there's a little bit of cut off on the background image, I don't really care. It's fine as long as it goes all the way to the edge. I'm fine with it. One last thing, actually, and that is before you go to save this out, you need to make sure that this is shut off. If you submit it with this brown border stuff in place, it's going to be rejected. So make sure that you shut that off, then you save it out. Sorry if I had done that incorrectly at first, but you want to make sure that when you're outputting this guy as a PDF, that this is not on. You have to hide that layer before doing it. I have actually submitted it more than once forgetting about the whole layer thing, and I was rejected every time for that reason, but never for the actual layout reason or anything like that. So just something to keep in mind, something to remember. Make sure that you check your file if you see this brown stuff around there, or if it's full. I think it's a yellowish color, but if you see that, that's bad. So shut it off, then save it out, and that's what you're going to submit. All right, that's it.